It was on the feet of Western States winners in 2022. It landed on the podium in Chamonix in 2023. And in 2024, it's finally here. This is the Adidas Terrex Agravic Speed Ultra. And it's time to see if it was worth the wait. Yo, what's going on? My name is Kofuzi and I'm a non-elite runner who reviews running shoes here on YouTube. And today I'm going to talk to you about the long-awaited Adidas Terrex Agravic Speed Ultra. Now, before I give you my thoughts on this shoe, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that Adidas Terrex sent to me for the purpose of review. However, nobody is paying me to include their shoe in this video, and nobody's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Terrex Agravic Speed Ultra, and let's start with the specs. The headline for this shoe is that it is made out of Adidas's Lightstrike Pro, their premier racing foam. They're putting it into a super tall stack height configuration as well. 42 millimeters of stack height in the heel and 34 millimeters of stack height in the forefoot. World Athletics rules don't apply here, so even though it is a jumbo shoe at plus 40 millimeters, there's no rule prohibiting any size in the trail world. Now, also in this shoe, there are energy rods, which are supposed to do a lot of the same things that a carbon fiber plate is supposed to do, but the energy rods is Adidas's take in them. And on the Terrex Agravic Speed Ultra, you can see them on the side windows, both on the lateral and medial sides, and it ends up with the shape of the shoe looking kind of like a Cheshire cat smile, if you asked me. Now, moving to the outsole, we have Continental rubber in a melted crayon configuration, which I always think looks fantastic whenever Adidas puts it into their Terrex trail shoes. And there's two different size lugs on the bottom of these shoes, 2.5 millimeters for the shorter lugs and 3.5 millimeter lugs for the ones where you want to have a little bit more bite and grip. Moving to the upper, we have synthetic materials with seamless overlays and a gusseted tongue. The tongue itself is super thin with zero padding on it, which is something I love to see in marathon road racing shoes. And for anything where I want to feel like I'm going fast, I don't really want a lot of padding, so I'm happy to see that there isn't a lot here. And even back into the heel cup, there isn't a lot going on here in terms of structure. It's very floppy, very reminiscent of a road racing shoe. Altogether, this shoe comes in at a race weight of 9.5 ounces or 269 grams. Now that we talked about what the shoe is like on paper, let's talk about what it's like when you get it in the dirt. And the first thing that I'll say is, if you are hoping for this to be an Adios Pro with trail lugs, that's not exactly what you're getting. On the plus side, I will say though that you really don't want that. I feel like the things that are excellent for road marathoning, the efficiency benefits, the bounciness of the shoe, are things that may not work well in a trail scenario where even though you are trying to run fast, you're running different kinds of fast for different periods of time over different kinds of terrain, which may not necessarily be flat and or fast. Now, I don't know for sure if they've changed the formula of the Lightstrike Pro, or if it's a function of the different geometry that's available in this shoe, this rocker geometry. But what I'm feeling in this shoe is something that doesn't quite have the squishiness, that compression and decompression that regular Lightstrike Pro has if you're comparing it to, say, the Adios Pro 3. And if I were to compare it to the Lightstrike Pro that's in an Adidas shoe, I'd say it's probably closer to what you're feeling in the Prime X2 Strung, a shoe that has Lightstrike Pro, and that actually has 2 layers of carbon elements in it, but it is stable in a way that makes it very different than the Adios Pro 3, for example, and even different from the previous versions of the Prime X that Adidas has made. And that level of kind of stability and a little bit more density to the foam is something that I'm feeling in the Terrex Agravic Speed Ultra. And I think that increased density that I'm feeling from this midsole system is something that makes a lot of sense on the trails. And I feel like the entire experience is tuned for all day and all night racing. Now, I live in the Midwest, so I don't have gigantic, long, extended climbs that I could test this shoe on readily available to me, but I do have some shorter, punchy stuff, and to the extent that I'm able to push the technical capabilities of a shoe, I feel like the Agravic Speed Ultra did really well. But the area that this shoe disappoints me is when the trail opens up and it's a little bit more buffed out and I can open up my stride. I feel like that's where this shoe really should shine the brightest, and I felt like that's where the shoe disappointed me the most. The weight of this shoe is light for a trail shoe, but it's not light for a shoe that I want to run really fast in, and that increased density that they've put in the foam makes it less exciting when you're really trying to turn over legs quickly and open it up in those spaces of your trail races where you might finally have the ability to really let it rip. I mean, the shoe felt fast and it felt competent, but it never felt super to me. I feel like Terrex went a little bit too conservative in terms of how stable to make the shoe. So now let's wrap up the video by talking about the last 2 trail races I did and whether in retrospect would I go back and use the Terrex Agravic Speed Ultra for it or not. And then we'll talk about some other shoes that I think are also worth considering if you're looking at the Terrex Agravic Speed Ultra. This shoe is available now for $220, and I feel like that's not a terrible price for a race day shoe, at least not coming over from the road marathoning world, but let's see where it stacks up. So the last race that I did was the Tiger Claw 50K, and I did have this shoe available to me, and I did try and test it before that race to see if maybe it was something that I would want to try. But instead, I went with the Salomon Thundercross, and I'm glad that I picked it over the Agravic Speed Ultra. And there's 2 main reasons for that. For me, I was expecting to take a very long time on this 50K. It had a lot of really long extended climbs, which is something that I'm not used to here in the Midwest. And I knew that I wasn't going to be trying to set any PBs in terms of pacing for this race. And I wanted to have something that was gonna be a little bit more comfortable, but also have some extra good traction in case things got messy. And I felt like the Thundercross struck a nice balance between chill and technical that made it a really good choice for that race. And the Salomon Thundercross comes in at $140, so quite a bit cheaper, but that shoe did not do very well in any of the flats, and it did not do so well on a lot of the downhills as well. I felt like there, I would have liked something that turned over a little bit better. And I do think that the Agravic Speed Ultra would have been really nice in the areas that the Thundercross was a bit lacking. But the main reason why I didn't pick it for what I knew would be a 7 or 8 hour effort for me was that the arch of the Agravic Speed Ultra has been bothering me in this shoe. I just think that it's either too long or perhaps the sizing of the shoe isn't quite right, but the shoe rubs up underneath my right arch almost instantly, and I feel it. After even just 2 hours in this shoe, it starts to feel like a blister is developing, and I just knew for an all-day effort like the Tiger Claw 50K, it really wouldn't work for me. Would I think it'd be a good choice for someone for whom the arch isn't an issue in this shoe? Absolutely. And then the race I ran before that was in Halloween. That was a 10-mile trail race in the park that I do most of my trail shoe testing. And for that shoe, where I actually ended up on the podium, I came in 3rd overall for that 10-mile race. I ran in the Craft Pure Trail. Now this is a supercritical EVA foam that doesn't have a carbon fiber plate in it, but I feel like it's really well balanced in terms of the softness and responsiveness that it's providing for trail racing purposes. So not only do I feel like it can go reasonably fast in this shoe, I also feel like it's comfortable enough for all day running or all day racing. That shoe comes in at $170, so it's $50 cheaper than the Agravic Speed Ultra. But if I could have had the Agravic Speed Ultra back in October of last year, I think I would have been excited to try and race in this shoe because I think it would also have been a really fun choice. Now there's two other shoes that I think that you should definitely take a look at if you're thinking about the Agravic Speed Ultra. And the first one I'm gonna talk about is from Hoka, and that's the Tecton X. I have the Tecton X version 1. I didn't test version 2. And the Tecton X3 is on the horizon. I believe it's coming out later this summer. But for now, we'll talk about the Tecton X 1/2. Now this had an updated ProFly X midsole that was very exciting, and a dual carbon blade system where it had two kind of pieces of carbon that ran in parallel along the length of the shoe, and this kept the foams stable and springy while also keeping the whole platform flexible enough to handle a variety of terrain. Now this shoe was fast, but it didn't feel exactly super to me, but that's just what it means to have a trail racing shoe when trail races can last so much longer than a road marathon can, whether it's 5 hours, 8 hours, 24 hours, or more. Now the Tecton X comes in at $225, so it's about the same price, a little bit more expensive than the Agravic Speed Ultra. And I think the last shoe that I'll take a look at is also from a Hoka, and that's the Speedgoat 5. Now the Speedgoat 6 is on the horizon. I actually do have it in for testing. Hit the subscribe button so you can see when that review drops. But let's talk about the Speedgoat 5 for now, because that's what's available and that's what I've tested so far. There is this stretchy, they call it a dynamic fit, this stretchy material that's in forefoot. I find it makes the entire shoe so much more comfortable, but it's also a shoe that feels very nimble and fast. And underneath, it's got the Vibram traction lugs that give you plenty of grip in a wide variety of terrain. And yes, it is using compression molded EVA and it doesn't have any carbon elements in it. But for a shoe that feels like it's race ready, and when we're talking about races that are 5 hours or 8 hours or longer, it's a shoe that I feel like I could definitely take for a trail ultra marathon distance race. And I know it's a shoe that you guys have been taking for your ultra marathon race distances as well. So I do think that it's a very compelling option. And the price on this retails at $155, although for the Speedgoat 5, you can find it as low as $124 right now. So it's almost $100 cheaper than the Agravic Speed Ultra. And I'm not sure that that shoe is $100 better. So those are my thoughts on the Agravic Speed Ultra. I'm not quite sure it was worth the 2 years of waiting that it took for us to finally be able to run in this shoe as non-elite consumers. But for those of you for whom the arch issue isn't going to be a problem, I do think that you will have a lot of fun racing in this shoe. If you have any other questions, put them in the comments down below, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Monday and Thursday over on the Kofuzi Run Clip channel. I'd love to talk to you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?